Coming up on Network Africa today, 7 killed, 17 trapped as mining pit collapses in Ghana. Gunfire and explosions rock Sudan despite ongoing talks as Interior Minister is sacked amid lawlessness. Plus, police officer killed in Senegal clashes ahead of Sonko's trial. Hello and welcome to Network Africa on Channels Television. Thank you for joining us. I'm Anne Nwawadu. Let's begin in Ghana, where 7 people have died and 17 others remain trapped after mining pits collapsed in Berim North District of the Eastern Region. Only 2 of the trapped miners were rescued alive at the Korle-Te-Corso site. Local miners who are leading the rescue mission reportedly prevented journalists from taking photographs of the incident and chased them away. Authorities are yet to comment on this incident, but heavy rains recorded in most parts of the country are suspected to have caused the pit to collapse. Illegal mining in Ghana, commonly known as galamsey, has continued despite intensified crackdown by the government. Let's continue with the war in Sudan. The military leader, Lieutenant General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, has sacked the acting Interior Minister, Anan Umar, who is also the chief police officer. General Burhan named Khalid al-Din as the new general director of police. No reason was given for the sacking, but General Burhan had earlier dismissed on similar decrees the governor of the central bank and 2 foreign ministry diplomats. The police have been very active in the conflict-hit areas, including the capital, Khartoum, since the fighting began on April the 15th. As a result, acts of lawlessness have continued to occur there, including looting and robbery, have been widely reported in these areas. A month of fighting between Sudan's rival military factions appears to have no end in sight, despite the much-touted truce talks brokered by the US and Saudi Arabia. Well, fierce clashes have continued in Sudan between the army and the RSF in the capital Khartoum, as well as neighboring cities of Omdurman and Bahri across the River Nile. The military has continued to carry out airstrikes. Residents sheltering in their homes are hearing loud explosions every day. Right groups in Darfur say that fighting around the city of El Geneina over the last few days has left more than 350 people dead. There have also been widespread reports of Arab militias loyal to the RSF attacking, looting and burning houses. A drone video obtained shows a fire raging in the Sudanese city of Omdurman, where intense fighting has continued. It has fought despite Saudi and US brokered talks between the army and the RSF. Talks in Jeddah aimed at securing humanitarian access and a ceasefire are yet to yield any positive result. The Sudanese army has carried out airstrikes in north of the capital, attacking its own paramilitary rivals around the hospital that witnesses say was damaged in the bombardment. But fighting has spread to the western region of Darfur, but it has been concentrated in the capital Khartoum, where RSF fighters have taken up positions across neighborhoods, and the army has used airstrikes and heavy artillery fire to target them. Army Chief General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and the Hemedti also held the top positions in Sudan's ruling council following the 2019 overthrow of former leader Omar al-Bashir during a popular uprising, and staged a coup just 2 years later as a deadline to hand over power to civilians approached. And a footage posted on the Sudanese paramilitary group Rapid Support Forces shows extensive damage done to one of the sides of Sharak El Nil Hospital in the Sudanese capital, Khartoum. Most hospitals have been put out of service. An employee of Sharak El Nil Hospital said the southern part of the facility was hit by an airstrike. The Army claimed that it had targeted arms and fuel depots around the hospital, which it said had been occupied by the RSF, and that there was no civilian casualty. Intense battles in Khartoum and its sister cities have raged despite the US and Saudi talks, and the RSF, between the RSF and the army in the Red Sea city of Jeddah, aimed at securing humanitarian access and an effective ceasefire, which has not yielded any result. Well, we know the fighting began April 15th, so it's been months now, the Sudanese sudden eruption into violence. But hundreds of thousands have been displaced by bombings and gunfire, mainly in the capital, Khartoum. For many still stranded in the coastal city Port Sudan, they're now facing extreme heat and a lack of water and shelter. Stranded families have been sleeping inside tents that have built from blankets or huddling in shaded areas as they try to escape the intense sunlight.
And the problem we are getting here is a very big problem. That now we are being, the people, they don't like us to be here. And now the way we are here with the children and the mothers, some of them they are sick, and there's no food, people they can eat. So we are suffering. We came under the United Nations, but they cannot do anything to us. We came to the government of Sudan, who are leading this town over here. They cannot help us anymore. We are listening that they are taking some other people from outside. We are listening that if you are not like that, they are going to take you to the war zone. What are we going to do in the war zone and we run from the war?
Sudan's Ambassador Al-Harid Mohammed says the humanitarian situation in the country has deteriorated, it is getting worse, and denied the Sudanese armed forces are breaching ceasefire agreements. He added that the government is exerting tremendous efforts to contain the impact of the situation in various aspects and has been able to control or reduce the intensity of this devastation. Secretary General Antonio Guterres welcomed the signing by the parties to the conflict of the Declaration of Commitment to protect civilians and guarantee the safe passage of humanitarian aid in the country.
Already dire humanitarian situation has deteriorated and is getting worse. However, the government is exerting tremendous efforts to contain the impact of the situation in various aspects and was able to control and reduce the intensity of the devastation. To date, no state of emergency has been declared, nor communication network is disrupted. There is urgent need for humanitarian services at the border crossings, which witness a crowding of citizens wishing to cross the border with children, elderly, and sick. The humanitarian condition is bad, and there is an urgent need for water, food, mobile clinics, temporary housing, and financial assistance until the completion of crossing procedures. The Sudanese authorities are working around the clock on the updates of figures of fatalities, wounded, the IDPs and refugees, and the exact number will be communicated in due course. We would like to reiterate that the humanitarian assistance operations should be conducted on the basis of the internationally recognized guiding principles of humanity, neutrality, impartiality, and independence, and that the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and national unity must be fully respected. The Sudanese armed forces are not launching an offensive. They are actually making a defensive. This is why they will not open fire only if they have been attacked. And this is why from time to time there will be a kind of what apparently may be as a breach of the ceasefire.
Let's now speak with VOA Africa correspondent Mariama Diallo, who speaks to us from VOA Africa Center in Nairobi, Kenya. Hello, Mariama, and thank you for joining us on Network Africa.
Hello, Anne. Thank you again for having me today.
All right. The Sudan Army Chief General Burhan has taken sweeping actions against the RSF, things like freezing accounts, dismissing officers, and even sacking the central bank governor. What effect do you think this could have on the war?
I think so far, as of today, not a lot of impact yet because fighting, clashes, and violence has continued in Khartoum, in other places like Bahri and Omdurman. Also, there are reports of fighting in that Western Darfur town of Janina. So in the short term today, not a lot of difference, not a lot of improvement, but I think that throughout this war, throughout this month of war, when we spoke to analysts, they always talked about, when we asked them the question, what do you think, what is it going to take to stop this war? Since the experience has been that ceasefires have not worked, a lot of diplomatic behind the scene has been taking place, but the war has not stopped. So those analysts have always told us it will end up being about money. Basically, one or both generals, the only way to stop is that when one of them runs out of money. Basically, to sustain a war, you need to finance it. So if there is no money, eventually you will have to stop. So I think General Al-Burhan seems like he has figured it out. And in the short term, we don't know. We don't see the results yet. But I guess within the week or 2 weeks, maybe in the upcoming weeks, we'll probably see some results if it succeeds.
All right, fingers crossed. But why do you think he didn't take this decision before? Why didn't he make this move before now?
Well, that's a great question. I am not sure why he did not make these kinds of decisions a month ago or maybe a week into the war. But there are indications when you talk to analysts and all of us who have been following this war the past month, there are indications that maybe he wasn't able to do it. Maybe he encountered some resistance. Maybe the central bank governor did not want to do it in the beginning. Maybe, and that could be for many reasons, maybe for legal or other reasons, who knows? It could also be an indication that maybe the central bank governor, had some loyalty to the RSF faction. But those are all just, thoughts that maybe that's the reason why he couldn't do it. He could not make those kinds of sweeping changes. But there is also indication that now that he's able to actually make those sweeping changes, that he might have a handle, on what's going on right now. Because I don't know if you remember, I think it was about a week ago or a week and a half ago when the Sudanese Army's special envoy to South Sudan had a presser with the acting South Sudanese foreign minister. And I remember him saying at the time, the Sudanese army is in control. And I think a lot of analysts people were a little bit shocked while everything, because the observations were that the fighting has not stopped and there were no indication that one general was winning over the other. So for him to have stood up there and said the Sudanese army was in control was a little bit kind of suspicious. But at this point, as of today, if Al-Burhan has been able to make those changes, maybe there is indication that he is, I can't say that he's in control, but at least there are some developments maybe in his favor. I can't comment on that. But if he's able to make these sweeping changes, I guess we'll see what the results are, if they hold.
All right, but it appears people who are stranded in Sudan have overstayed their welcome. Why exactly are they stranded? What is going on? Why are they not out of that place?
Well, I think at this point, that's a great question. At this point, for anybody who is stranded inside of Sudan, there are many reasons why they're stranded. The first reason would be basically they don't have a choice. I mean, we've seen, a week into the war, 2 weeks into the war, we've seen foreign governments sweeping in and trying to evacuate their citizens. Some other governments have also even evacuated citizens of other countries. But that was quick and they were able to do it. But the bigger question is that not everybody was able to be evacuated. I mean, when you think about it, and I'll give you an example. There are so many countries, for example, whose nations don't have diplomatic representation in Sudan. So when foreign governments were coming in, taking their diplomatic people out, like those people, they didn't. The reason why I say this is because basically, I think 2 weeks ago, when there was an influx of refugees in Chad, my bosses sat down and said, Mariama, we might want to send you to Chad. Let's figure out how we're going to do it. Sure enough, I said yes. but I had just gotten into Nairobi maybe a month and a half before that. So what do? I said, let me contact the diplomatic mission, the embassy of Chad in Nairobi. And I figured out that they didn't have diplomatic representation. So in order for me to get to Chad, I have to go through Ethiopia, through Addis Ababa. And in order to get to Addis Ababa, I also need a visa to get there. So you can see it's a long story short, that at the end, it would have taken me much longer to get to Chad. We decided to send somebody else on the border. So I think it's I said this story because I'm sure it's the same thing in Sudan. There are many people who are there who don't have a choice. They can't go. And also just the Sudanese people themselves who we've seen the influx of Sudanese in the borders, and you can just tell that a lot of them have risked everything to get there, have risked their lives, their families' lives, they've left loved ones as well. Not everybody was able to go. So I think at this point, when you're there, there are no choices. You're there to stay, and I'm sure you're doing your best to see how to get to another safer area.
All right. Thank you very much, Mariama Adiallo. Thank you, as always, for your contribution on Network Africa.
Thank you, Anne, for having me.
Let's head to Senegal now, where a police officer was killed during clashes between Senegalese security forces and supporters of opposition leader Ousmane Sonko in the southern town of Ziguinchor. The police officer was accidentally hit by a vehicle during the violence. The clashes occurred near Mr. Sonko's home, where he has been staying while vowing to defy any summons to appear in court for a rape trial. Supporters have surrounded his home since last week, fearing the police would move to arrest him and bring him to court. Reports say security has been tightened in the capital, Dakar, ahead of the resumption of Mr. Sonko's rape trial. He was charged based on a woman's accusations that he assaulted her when she worked at a massage salon 2 years ago. Mr. Sonko and his allies deny the charges. They say they are employed to bar him from contesting the 2024 presidential election. He was handed a 6-month suspended sentence on May the 8th for defaming tourism minister Mbaye Niang and a review of the initial 2-month term. After the break, in just a moment, Tunisia opposition leader Rachid Ghannouchi jailed for 1 year over allegations of incitement. Details in just a moment. Please stay with us. Welcome back. A Tunisian court has sentenced opposition leader Rachid Ghannouchi to 1 year in prison. The Ennahda party leader, who is a fierce critic of President Kais Saied, has been detained since last month after being arrested for incitement and allegedly plotting against state security. Mr. Ghannouchi has rejected the allegations as politically motivated, refusing to appear before the judges. His detention last month, alongside others, sparked international condemnation, including by the United States, the European Union, and rights groups. Since February, 20 of Mr. Saied's political opponents and personalities have been arrested, including former ministers and business figures. Kenya's President William Ruto has sacked a principal secretary in charge of public health and disbanded the entire board of a medical supplies agency amid a corruption scandal. The scam involves a bungled tender worth $27 million involving donor-funded treated bed nets meant to protect against malaria-causing mosquitoes. The Global Fund has tasked the Kenyan Medical Supplies Authority, KEMSA, to procure more than 10 million nets to be distributed to low-income households in about half of the counties in the country that are malaria endemic. But Global Fund cancelled the tender, accusing KEMSA of irregularities by allegedly favouring one company whose documents were not in order and unfairly locking out others. Let's head to South Africa now, where the National Defence Forces Army Chief Lawrence Mbatha is in Moscow for a bilateral meeting where he will visit Russian military academies and hold talks with officials. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa said the country's non-aligned position did not favour Russia over other states and reiterated its call for a peaceful resolution to the conflict in Ukraine. Mr. Ramaphosa made the comments in a weekly presidential newsletter.
Two leaders that I had occasion to speak to, that is President Putin and President Zelensky, agreed that they would be willing to receive a mission of the African heads of states in both Moscow and Kyiv. I agreed with both of them that we would commence with the preparations for the engagements with these African heads of state. My discussions with the two leaders demonstrated that they are both ready to receive the African leaders and to have a discussion on how this conflict can be brought to an end. Whether that will succeed or not is going to depend on the discussions that will be held.
And back here in Nigeria, the Lagos state government says that 20,000 farmers will be empowered with inputs under its 2022 Agricultural Value Chains Enterprise Support Program. The State Commissioner for Agriculture, Abisola Olusoya, stated this at the flag-off of the 2022 Agricultural Value Chains Enterprise Support Program in the Ikorodu area of Lagos.
The agricultural value chain in Nigeria continues to play a vital role in the availability of farm produce in the country. In Lagos, the state government is racing to become self-sufficient in food production and has constantly supported farmers. This time, the government is empowering 20,000 of them under its 2022 Agricultural Value Chains Enterprise Support Program in Ikorodu.
We have been able to train over 51,000 people, women, youth, men, and empowered over 25,691 across the various value chains. Over 20,000 fisher folks and farmers will benefit from the program, one way or the other, while budgetary provision has been made to accommodate a larger number of value chain actors in this year's program. This is expected to help scale food production from 20% to the projected 40 to 50% that we should be getting by 2025.
The initiative, which has been ongoing since 2014, has made remarkable impact on farmers, and this year is not an exception.
Edition of the program, which is implemented on a communal basis, is tailored to addressing the needs expressed by fisher folks and farmers in fishing and farming clusters, stroke communities across the 57 local government and local council development areas of the state.
The monarch in Ikorodu and others commend the state government for its support to agriculture and food production.
With all what she has told us, we are prepared. And what she has come to present to you is just a drop of water in the ocean. Please, my palace is open. You can get your message through me to the commissioner.
Fertilizers, pest control and other modernized equipment were distributed to the farmers for effective production.
The smoking fish kiln that they've given to us is going to be very useful for us. It's going to take our business to another level. It's a way of adding business, adding value to our products, and that is where that's the direction to go.
Initiatives such as this will go a long way towards achieving a better farm yield that will make Lagos self-reliant.
And this is where we end Network Africa for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Anne Nwawadu. Please stay safe.